close-knit neighborhood. This close-knit neighborhood is located south of downtown. Residents
Good afternoon. We'll call to order the Phoenix City Council policy session for January 24th, 2023. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio. Councilmember Garcia. Councilwoman Guardado.
Here.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Waring.
here.
Vice Mayor Ansari.
Here.
Mayor Gallego.
Here. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll begin with council information and follow-up requests. And why don't we cue up Councilwoman Pastor's presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All righty. District 4 policy presentation. January 28th, we will be having the neighborhood cleanup. It's on 51st and McDowell. Please honk if you see us. Honk, honk, or stop by. Slide 2. Love is in the air. I will be at CPLC hosting a Valentine's Day party at Casa de Primavera. And if people know me well enough, people know that I don't like to run. So somehow, the youth got me to participate in the African American Reconstruction 5K Marathon. Charles is going to be training me, and as he's training me, we're going to document that through TikTok. So please follow me. Drag Queens and Mini Ponies Brunch. I will co-host a Drag Queens and Mini Ponies Brunch on March 26th to raise money for the LGBTQIA youth therapy classes at Humpaki Farms. And one last thing I'd like to say is Happy New Year, the year of the rabbit. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council updates? Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to start by sharing a few items. First off, I'm excited to invite residents to our West Plaza Park ribbon cutting tomorrow, January 25th at 11 a.m. West Plaza Park is located at the northeast corner of 43rd Avenue in Maryland. A special thank you to our Parks and Recreation Department for their hard work renovating this park and making it a really beautiful new neighborhood amenity. I also want to thank our Neighborhood Services Department for the $1.9 million in grant funding it took to make this project possible. Finally, I want to personally thank all the residents who helped us what improvements they wanted to see. Their input helped our team immensely, and the park will now include a beautiful updated playground, basketball and volleyball courts, a fit Phoenix walking path, and exercise equipment, something that the neighborhood has been asking for a very long time, and we're very excited to be able to deliver something like this. Next, I want to give a big thank you to the students, teachers, and staff at Desert Sands Middle School involved in the project Citizen Cartwright Scholars. I had a really great time being able to talk to a wonderful group of students. Making sure that we get our youth involved in city politics, I think, is incredibly important. Everyone was very excited to see what are the different things that they can get involved in and the different type of new amenities that they would love to be able to add into their neighborhoods. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, as a longtime subscriber to Time Magazine, lo and behold, I open up and there is a great article about you and the great city of Phoenix. So I wanted to give you a shout out. Thank you so much. It really portrayed you well as our great city. So compliments to you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
All right, and I also have a slide deck. First off, I want to wish the Asian communities across Phoenix who just celebrated a very happy Lunar New Year. Happy Year of the Rabbit for those who are Vietnamese, Happy Year of the Cat. Next slide. Community safety across District 7. My office and I have been engaging in multiple community meetings to equip residents with the right information when it comes to reporting crime, encampments, blight, etc. Just want to highlight that this last Saturday we had over 60 residents spend their morning at Burton Bar Library. Want to give a huge thank you to Assistant City Manager Lori Beige, Chief Sullivan, the Office of Homelessness Solutions, Neighborhood Services, Phoenix PD, for the great presentations. We got really positive feedback at this community meeting. I think more than anything, my takeaway was that residents were shocked in the best way possible about all of the work that the city of Phoenix is doing to combat homelessness, whether it's with our new shelters and even with the CAP program that we invested in late last year. Many had not even heard about that yet. So just want to say that I think when we take the time to not shy away from these issues and address them head on at these community meetings, it was really great to see how productive and excited residents were about all the work that the city is doing. Next slide. I am also excited to share that I am spearheading a Women Life Freedom mural project in the heart of the downtown Phoenix Art District. If you have driven by on Roosevelt Street this past week, we have three incredible female Iranian American artists who are working on the mural that we have commissioned. And it will be home to the only mural in the entire state of Arizona that will raise awareness and stand in solidarity with the brave women and girls who have been risking their lives fighting for freedom in Iran since September 16th, 2022. Also last week, a group of community leaders and myself met with Congressman and former Mayor Greg Stanton to discuss how the U.S. Congress specifically can support Iranian people through this crisis. We are very grateful for his time and especially his early support for the protesters. Next slide, please. Regional updates for Estrella and Levine. So thrilled to share that JA Solar announced bringing 600 good-paying jobs and will be the biggest solar manufacturing plant in the entire state. This is a $60 million investment coming to the Estrella area. We'll also be investing in new amenities for Santa Maria Park. Just completed a survey of elementary, middle, and high school students in the area for what they want to see in the park, so we'll be excited to announce that soon. Last night, my team was at Coffee with a Cup in Levine, and we were pleased to finally announce that the Cesar Chavez Community Center, again, finally will be open in March, most likely around Cesar Chavez Day. Residents have waited long enough, and if Mark Rodriguez is listening, we're hopefully excited to send out a special invitation to him because he's been waiting for quite a long time for this. Next slide. Maryville and South Phoenix, we've been working to shape various developments in the South Central Corridor and will be at Ocotillo Library tomorrow evening. I will stop by after the formal council meeting for our mobile office hours. You can expect free school supplies and updates on bulk trash, free tax filing assistance, and more. In Maryville, we recently selected the Desert West Park area to get locally designed vinyl wrap traffic signal cabinets that speak to the culture of this neighborhood, which is a great partnership through the Streets team and Office of Arts and Culture. Next slide. Downtown Phoenix, as I alluded to earlier, we've been spending a lot of time recently letting residents know how successful our block-by-block cleanups at the zone have been going and how, with council approval, once it goes through subcommittee, I hope that we will be bringing some graffiti-proof public bathrooms that actually offset the cost and staffing challenges that come with more traditional stalls that run into issues. Last week, our streets department launched the 35 square mile grid expansion of e-scooters and e-bikes across our city. And I was also impressed to learn that Lime offers anyone living in Phoenix who is eligible for Medicaid and or SNAP benefits up to 5 free rides in Lime units every day. There will also be 30% discounts available for anyone living in the City of Phoenix designated equity zones. And final slide, upcoming events. There's a lot to look forward to. February 4th, we have the Levine Community Parade. February 23rd, my office is hosting a blood drive in partnership with Red Cross at Desert West Community Center. February 25th, we'll be at the 71st Annual Levine Barbecue. And in partnership with District 8, we are working on an activation event for the Levine Area Conveyance Channel on March 4th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. I am overjoyed to announce that Metro Center has officially entered its next phase to bring this incredible vision to reality. Mr. Schrang and his partners are the right people who will return this area to the crown jewel of the desert. So big kudos to Chris Mackey and her team for taking this all the way to the finish line. And we're very excited. The Metro District Community Collaboration had a kickoff earlier this month, and they have new office space by Adelante Healthcare in Metro Center, and we'd like to thank Gordon and Dana Kaig for that office space. I was pleased to join the Mayor and Chief Sullivan earlier this month to sign the 30 by 30 resolution to commit to increasing our female officers to 30% by 2030. We are at 14%, which is 2% ahead of the nation, and our cadet program is more than 50% female, so kudos to them. The Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association had their Superhero Saturday this month, where you got to meet your hometown superheroes. They did that in conjunction with Child Help, and I'd like to give a big shout out to Lieutenant Mark Schweikert for all of his work on that event. And also they honored some of community members from across the city, and several of them were from District 1, Gail and Cliff Morgan from the Metro District Block Watch, Jamie Mason from the Lake Biltmore Block Watch, and then Dave Ford and Judy Stout from the Cactus Wren Block Watch. We all know that it takes all of the community members along with our city police department and city staff to keep us safe. The District 1 Community Breakfast is January 27th at 7:30 a.m. at Metro Center Doubletree Inn. Please join us if you are able. And happy Lunar New Year, Year of the Rabbit. I was honored to help open the Chinese Festival Week with Eva Lee, who is the chair of the Chinese Festival Week Committee, and Chico Sweeney who is the chair of the Sister Cities Board. Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful time to be out there on Saturday. A little chilly, I'm not going to lie, but really fun to see the lion dances and a lot of the participants at the festival. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Lots of congratulations and milestones. I want to celebrate that SemiCon West, which is a major semiconductor conference, is starting a 5-year rotation in Phoenix. A huge thank you to our convention center, CED, GPEC, ACA, and everyone who worked to make that possible. It really recognizes that we are one of the leaders in the semiconductor industry with 75 companies and growing in our market, and it will be wonderful to welcome the industry to Phoenix. So thank you to everyone who worked to make that exciting news possible. With that, we will turn to our city manager for reports and budget updates.
Thank you, Mayor. The only report that I have today is that starting next month, we begin our formal march to adopt a budget for the fiscal year 23-24. So on February 2nd, you will receive from us our inventory of programs, which is the zero-based budget document. It is that big document that Councilman DeCiccio has kind of, I think, come to love. It's a very big document that shows us on a very low level for the average resident to be able to understand the services and the resources that we direct at each of those services. Then on March 21st, we'll be back, or February 21st, we'll be back with the 5-year forecast and general fund status. And then on March 21st, we'll come back with the city manager's trial budget and take that out to the community in April. So this will begin next month, the updates on the budget.
Wonderful. Thank you to everyone who's preparing for that important process. We will next go to agenda item 1, update on yellow light timing study, and I will turn to Mario Paniagua, our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. We're here today to update you on a study that the Street Transportation Department is conducting on the timing of our yellow lights at our traffic signals to determine whether lengthening the time of those yellow signals can mean fewer red lights that are run. I'll introduce the presentation team here. To my left is Kini Knudsen, Street Transportation Director, along with Brianna Velez, Assistant Street Transportation Director. And we have a special guest, Natalie Carrick, who's the Principal Traffic Engineer with Stanley Consultants, who's going to be assisting with the presentation today. We've had multiple discussions on roadway safety and on Vision Zero, talking about the issue of safety on our roads and a lot of the concerns with the serious injuries and fatalities. Councilman DeCiccio, you and other members of the council have specifically asked staff to look into the issue of yellow light timing and whether changing the yellow light timing, extending the timing can help us reduce red light running and improve safety. With help from the Budget and Research Department and outside experts, we have looked deeper into what the industry guidelines say. We've looked at what other jurisdictions are doing and what experts are saying about the issue. And we've found conclusively that there is no conclusive consensus on what to do with the yellow timing. Staff knows how important the use of actual data is to this council in decision making when it comes to safety issues that are complicated like this one. So the city is undertaking a study of its own. We're working with experts from the University of Arizona to help us collect data from the field at our intersections here in Phoenix, studying our drivers in Phoenix to see what happens to red light running when yellow lights have longer times. So given all that needed to happen with this study, the study was underway fairly quickly, although I understand it may not always feel like that to everyone, but it required identifying and selecting researcher experts, developing a study plan, procuring and installing equipment at multiple intersections, and then collecting the data over sufficient time. The study is not finished, and it's important that we give enough time to collect the data to be meaningful, to account for key variables, and ensure we have adequate information to make good decisions on our traffic signal timing. We're giving an update today, as we know council members have questions about how the study's going and what the findings are so far. So Kini, Brianna, and Natalie will cover the background, explain the study, and provide preliminary data and discuss next steps. I will warn you that some of this gets a little bit technical, so we appreciate you bearing with us as we go through this, but it's helpful to understand some of these details as we discuss this important issue. Kini?
Thank you, Mario, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The genesis of the yellow lights timing study that we're talking about here came from changes that were made recently in 2020 by the Institute of Transportation Engineers on how to provide guidance on signal timing for red lights and yellow lights. Those changes that ITE made back in 2020 haven't been without a little bit of controversy and healthy debate among the industry and transportation professionals. And we'll get into some of those details about why it's been a little bit controversial, what these guidelines are, and why the consensus that Mario mentioned hasn't been reached. The City of Phoenix currently uses ITE guidelines that were in place prior to 2020. So first, to start off the presentation, I wanted to put a graphic on the screen that depicts what a typical traffic signal or intersection looks like here in Phoenix. This intersection is an important part of our transportation network because it provides a place where two streets meet, and whether you're in a vehicle or in a motorcycle or in a city bus, or whether you're bicycling, scootering, walking, or using another mobility option to get around, this is an intersection. These are intersections that people need to be able to get to where they're going to. In the city, we have some intersections that are signalized, some that are not. The crux of this presentation is about those signalized intersections, the ones that do have traffic signals. And so at these intersections, we need to make sure people get through safely and where they're going to. And for that to happen, it's imperative that people obey what the traffic signals tell them to do. So one of the most serious issues at our traffic signals, at our signalized intersections, is red light running, and that's why we're here talking about that today. This is not just a problem in Phoenix, but it's a problem across the United States. And data collected from the American Automobile Association, or AAA, and the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety show the following. First, more than 2 fatalities happen every day in the United States from red light running. Then we also have 928 fatalities and 116,000 injuries in the U.S. in 2020 alone. And then here locally, over a 6-year stretch from 2014 to 2020, we saw 113 fatalities and 93 injuries that occurred in Phoenix metro area due to red light running incidents. Now, going back to the early days of your driving experience, back when we all took our driver's test and all these rules were fresh in our mind, let's remember what yellow lights are here for. The first one here is that it informs a driver that the green phase has ended. And then when that happens, it provides time for the driver to stop or to continue safely through that intersection. So this slide right here shows what happens at a yellow light in a more visual and descriptive manner. You are a car traveling here and you have the green light. Now, as you're driving, that green light is ended and you get the yellow light. That yellow light provides time for a driver to react and make a decision on whether to stop or proceed through the intersection. This reaction time equates to a distance what the vehicle is making or is moving while that decision is being made. If the driver elects to stop, the yellow light also provides time for braking and stopping the vehicle. Together, the yellow light provides time for as a minimum stopping distance here for that reaction distance and the braking distance to be able to stop safely. The manual on uniform traffic control devices is one of the guidelines we use. It provides for a minimum of 3 seconds of yellow light timing and a maximum of 6 seconds time for yellow light. After the yellow light has ended, the red light comes on, and I apologize, the presentation looks like it's got some issues here, but the red light tells the vehicles that they're traveling at the intersection in that same direction that they need to stop and they need to not continue through the intersection. At all of our signalized intersections, there is something else happening that you likely have noticed. We include what is called a red clearance interval. It is also called all red timing at the signal. This is when the signal has red indication lights for everybody who's at that signal and nobody has a green light. This occurs at a change between any of the phases of that signal. That red clearance interval time is meant to provide time for anybody who may be running a red light to be able to get through that intersection without having opposing green movements where you can have those serious injuries and fatality-related accidents. This is a safety measure that's not required to be put in here, but it's something that Phoenix does to be able to make sure our street and our intersections are safer. For this next section, I'm going to dive into a little bit of an explanation of how our timing of our signals goes, but not too deep. I want to be respectful of that. But first, in an ideal scenario, our signals are timed the whole cycle length from green light, and it goes around in a circle to be able to green light. It's about 2 minutes or 120 seconds. It's ideal, but it's also a best practice in the industry to be able to manage the balance here. So in this case, we have 15 seconds that is be afforded for east and west traffic for dedicated left turn movements. Then it's followed by 45 seconds here where you'd have through movements in the east and west bound directions. Then that's followed by 15 seconds of interval before left turn movements in the north-south direction, and then finally 45 seconds for through movements and right turn movements in the north-south direction. And this cycle repeats itself throughout the day. But at that time that we have there is not just for the green light. We have to also account for the yellow lights and the red light timing. We also have to make sure that there's sufficient time at that intersection for pedestrians to adequately cross the intersection at those crosswalks that are at that intersection. And I also say it's also ideal, the 2 minutes there is because that's when you have 4 legs of an intersection and 4 phases. You might have more complex intersections like where we encounter light rail where you might have more phases than normal. You also might have multiple legs of the intersection like at Grand Avenue where you have more than 2 streets coming into each other. So to review, the City of Phoenix does use for its current signal timing practices the standard operating procedures that followed pre-2020 ITE guidelines. So how does this look in action? Well, I'll put you in the driver's seat and let you kind of see for yourself. This is a very critical intersection for us. It's in Councilwoman Guardado's district. It's at Indian School Road and 75th Avenue. And there's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit in both directions, both on Indian School and on 75th Avenue. So you are traveling in the eastbound direction on Indian School Road. You have the green light, and that means you can go. Well, as you're driving up and approaching the intersection, you get the yellow light. And the yellow light is meant to provide you that time again to stop safely or to proceed through the intersection before the red light comes on. In this case, you were lucky enough to get the yellow light, but you have 4.3 seconds to be able to make that decision. So I'm going to show you what 4.3 seconds looks like at this intersection. And so at that point in time, when you reach to 0, you have successfully stopped at the intersection and you have the red light. But somebody on your right didn't make that same decision. They decided to go through the intersection and they didn't stop. So you've stopped and watched them go on the side, and this person is a red light runner. But we have also, as I mentioned, that all red time where we don't have any green lights at the same time. We have 2.3 seconds within our timing, our current signal timing, for that intersection to clear. This is what that looks like. So that is just one intersection we're talking about here, and we aren't just talking about the timing of one. We're talking about timing of 1,200 signalized intersections across the city. And that becomes a little more complex when you're working in a system of signals that are trying to work together and coordinate together. This slide shows how complicated this can get when the number of signals have been added over a 15-year period, and this is baseline road. We've had that many signals that have been added. And what that does is the intensification of that development means that we have more signalized intersection, which makes the timing of those and coordination of them much more complex. So we have those competing traffic priorities and priorities that end up having longer signal phase timing. And then ultimately, that impacts our ability to be able to move traffic efficiently through our signalized intersections. And we have the reduced ability to be able to get signal progression when you hit those green lights along a roadway stretch when you're traveling along. And so everybody loves that when they hit the green lights, but as we add those signals, it makes it much more difficult to do that in a timing perspective when we have more signals. But that's the reality we work with in the Street Transportation Department. So before I dive into the yellow light timing study details, I wanted to summarize how Phoenix currently times our signals. First, we use the standard operating procedures for pre-2020 IT guidelines. We're consistent in the application of those timing calculations. They are based on the posted speed limit of the roadways that are approaching that intersection. And one of the concerns we have is making sure we're managing driver expectation, what they are supposed to encounter and how they're supposed to act when they encounter a yellow light or a red light timing. Now I'm going to hand it over to Natalie to walk you through an overview of the 2020 ITE guidelines, which is the subject of the current study. Natalie will also cover some of the key changes in industry issues concerning the new guidelines.
Thank you, Kenny. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Kenny made reference to the 2020 guidelines that the Institute of Transportation published in early 2020. These guidelines were developed by a group of subject matter experts on a volunteer basis and also included members of the ITE staff as well as a panel of experts as reviewing the recommended guidelines. The guidelines are intended to assist practitioners in determining the length of time needed for the red and yellow clearances. A few of the key recommendations in these standard of practice include using the actual driver speed as opposed to the posted speed limits of the roadways. The new guidelines will require extensive field data collection in determining what these actual speeds are, but the ITE recognizes that this is a labor-intensive task and recommends a assumed actual speed of the posted speed limit plus 7 miles per hour. The guidelines also introduce a calculation for determining the length of time needed for a left turn yellow. This is something new that has been introduced since previous versions of guidelines for signal timing. And the recommended practice for calculating is only for the left turns and excludes any right turning left turn time for the yellow. This is due because the subject matter experts felt that using the right turning speed would result in excessive left turn arrows or excessive yellow timing for a right turning vehicle. And throughout the guidelines, there's extensive emphasis on the use of engineering judgment. IT acknowledges that the recommendations need to be supplemented with engineering judgment to ensure a balance between the engineering theory used to develop these recommended practice and the practical application of these standards. So when we look at the yellow time needed for a through movement, the city's current policy uses this posted speed limit of the road. And those times range from 3 seconds to 4.7 seconds for a posted speed of 25 to 50 miles per hour. Utilizing the 2020 recommended practice and the estimated driver speed of posted speed plus 7, the increase in yellow time for the various speeds is about a half a second. However, when we look at the yellow change interval for left turns, the City of Phoenix current policy utilizes a turning speed of 25 miles per hour, regardless of the posted speed limit, and therefore all left turns have a yellow time of 3 seconds. The 2020 recommended practice uses the estimated driver's approach speed to the intersection, accounts for the deceleration of that vehicle, and then utilizes a 20-mile-an-hour turning speed. With this calculation, the yellow time increases up to 3.9 seconds for a posted speed of 50 miles per hour. The all red clearance that Kenny was discussing earlier is the time needed for a vehicle to clear that intersection. Both the City of Phoenix and the ITE recommended practice utilize the same method, which is taking the width of the intersection and dividing it by the speed to determine the length of that all red. The difference is in how the speed and the width of the intersection is defined, and with those differences, the recommended practice compared to the city's current policy is virtually the same. The ITE recommended practice uses a faster speed covering a longer distance, and therefore it's kind of a wash between the two. So that brings us to the industry debate on the use of the recommended ITE practice. The main focus on the debate is centered around the use of the actual speed as opposed to the posted speed limit and the calculation for the left turn yellow. The recommended practice does not account for intersection approach speeds changing throughout the day. We saw on the previous slide that the faster the speed, the longer the yellow light. So during peak hours when vehicles may be traveling slower than they would in a free flow condition, the yellow light may be longer than needed in these cases. In relation to the longer yellow time, the ITE recognizes that the equation for calculating the left turn yellow may be excessive and caps it at 7 seconds. However, as Kenny mentioned previously, the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, caps the yellow light at 6 seconds, so the two manuals are contradictory. And finally, there's little real-world application of these new guidelines. The impact longer yellow lights have on driver behavior, perception, reaction time, and deceleration rates of left-turning vehicles, and understanding approach speeds and turning speeds of left-turning vehicles are 3 areas that ITE has recognized as needing additional research.
Thank you, Natalie. Would you pause for a second? Councilwoman Pastor has a question.
I have a question with number 1. Recommended practice does not account for intersections approach changing throughout the day due to congestion. Do we have the ability to do that with our signals?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the council, with some of our intersections with the equipment that we have, the more modern equipment, we do have the ability to have timing adjusting on the fly or based on the congestion or the actual traffic that's approaching the intersection, but that isn't true of all of our intersections because we have a long range of years of technology in our intersections. It's not all in the last couple years that our intersection technology is based on. We have intersections that are much, much older and have older equipment than what we are able to today with current technology.
Okay, because my understanding is we are changing and phasing the traffic signal lights. So I guess what I would like to see, and you could provide it to the council later on, is what the timeline is to modernize all our traffic signals. And then at that point, be able then to look at how we could adjust. I'm just providing, I'm sure you have the solution here, but it triggered me to ask because I'll forget. And so that was just, I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, I think that's a great question. And typically with the yellow and red lights, those are considered the base timing parameters of any signal. And the signal timing does change throughout the day as far as how much total cycle time and green time is allocated to each phase, but those base timing parameters typically remain the same throughout the entire day.
Councilman Waring.
Thank you. It was a point I was going to bring up later, but we've kind of gotten led into it. So, Keeney, you and I have discussed, you made a great point. When I started here at the City Council, I think our phone system had been installed in 1989. So at one point in trying to explain the difference of our traffic lights around the city, we were like, if it's like our 1989 phone was trying to talk to, an iPhone from 2022, that's probably not going to work. And if you try to have it do the same thing, that's probably not going to work either. But I know it's also super expensive. I know we're doing some of it, but to modernize our lights, we've got, I think, 1,100 intersections that have lights. You can correct me if that's wrong, but I think that's what I recall. I guess, how do you make the lights all do the same stuff? And just a subsequent question, we've had issues, I'm sure probably the other districts have too. Sometimes if you have construction, or I can't remember some of the other examples, but things have happened at intersections that throw off the timing of the lights. Cactus and Tatum, which is in Deb's district, not mine, but I use it all the time, and other constituents do as well. Like, I thought, wow, that green right turn arrow or left turn arrow is really short. And then somebody complained, so I complained to you, and it was, and I can't remember, construction or something had thrown it off. So that does happen. How do you ensure against that? And the older lights have that problem more than the newer lights? I know there's a lot encompassed in that, but how do you maintain consistency, which I think is one of the most important things in this?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, members of the council, I'll kind of unpack that from the most recent what you asked and to going backwards. I think the first thing is all of our signals will have some kind of impact due to construction or any traffic accidents that might happen out there. Our newer signals have camera systems with them where they have sensor equipment that is able to detect what traffic is coming at the intersection and be able to react that way. When you move back towards earlier in our technology, we also had detector loops that were in the pavement, and those tend to get a lot of damage through construction or even our own maintenance activities on our streets because those detector loops have to be replaced when we do pavement maintenance or an overlay. And so those will cause some of the timing to go back into a setting that doesn't do detection for what traffic is there, and then all the way back to just doing straight timing of our signals without any detection. So all of our signals kind of have that range of technology, and if you're looking at, it's 1,200 traffic signals we have around the city. If we were to decide we're going to replace and put those on a 10-year replacement cycle, so no signal is older than 10 years, that would mean we're replacing or modernizing 120 signals a year, and those run of about $400,000 to $500,000 each. You can do the math pretty quickly that is a big number to do. We do our best to modernize the traffic signals we need to and work to be able to put out the latest technology we can, but it is a challenge of resources.
But you're confident you could get them all doing the same thing, roughly?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, members of council, that's correct. That's what we would like to do. That's a benefit of our technology because we know as people travel with different patterns, north, south, east, west through our cities, we need to make sure our signal technology is being able to adapt to whatever traffic's being thrown at it. But that's what our intent is, to be able to get to that point.
With the caveat that even if we change the timing of the yellow, construction or an accident could happen and then throw it off, apparently.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Going back to the slide here, the first bullet at the bottom of the screen, we need to understand the impact of driver behavior and safety on the use of longer yellow lights. It's widely thought that longer yellow lights can lead to unsafe driver behavior when the drivers become aware of this longer light and become familiar with them. Continued research in this area would improve this body of knowledge. The perception reaction time and the deceleration time for turning vehicles, these are two variables in determining the length of that yellow light. The standard of practice is to use 1 second of perception reaction time and 10 feet per second squared for the deceleration rate. Additional data and analysis is needed to determine if this perception reaction time and the deceleration rate of a left-turning vehicle should be the same as that of a through vehicle. In the last bullet, the two more variables in the yellow time equation are approach speed and turning speed. Both of these variables can vary depending on the characteristics of the left turn lane. Left turn lanes have a variety of geometric and operational characteristics that potentially affect their turning speed and approach speed, and we would benefit from additional research in those areas. Finally, additional studies are underway. As Kenny had mentioned, the FHWA is conducting a pooled fund study in this area of calculating the left turn yellow, and the City of Phoenix is participating in that study. The city's streets department is also conducting the signal timing field study that Kenny mentioned, and Brianna will go over in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. As Natalie mentioned, there has really been a lot of debate within the industry about the appropriate length of the yellow and red signals, and it's really due to the lack of field studies that have determined its actual effect on safety and efficiency. So that is why this field study that the city is undertaking in partnership with the University of Arizona is so critically important. The goals of the study are to evaluate the ITE 2020 guidelines for yellow change and red clearance intervals. We need to identify the relationship between the signal timing changes and the driver's behavior. We need to determine whether the new guidelines on yellow change and red clearance intervals can enhance the safety of signalized intersections. And we need to evaluate potential efforts to reduce the frequency of red light running events. So as part of the study to evaluate the relationship between signal timing and red light running events, smart video detection sensors were installed at 12 locations. The criteria used to select the 12 intersections were red light running related crash frequency and severity, as well as Maricopa Association of Government top 100 intersections ranked by crash risk. After ranking the intersections using these data sets, the feasibility of the installation of the sensors was considered. The 12 intersections ultimately selected were the ones with the highest rank that also did not require any upgrades for the installation of the smart sensor equipment. All of the smart sensor equipment was installed and activated in August 2022. So what kind of data is being collected by these sensors? So this MyoVision smart sensor equipment at each study intersection is capturing the signal timing data, which contains information about the traffic signal cycle lengths, the yellow change interval, the red clearance interval, as well as the green phase. It's also capturing the turning movement counts, which really represents the left turn, the through, and the right turn movements that pass through the intersection, and the red light and yellow light running data, which captures each vehicle that entered the intersection during the red or yellow light. All of this data collected will go through a quality control process to identify and filter out any outliers. So let's take a look at the baseline data. So again, the baseline data is our current standards for signal timing, and so nothing was changed. So during the 12-week period at all 12 locations, there were a total of 144,795 red light running incidents that happened over that 12-week period. Approximately 88% of those occurred during the all red phase. And so remember, the all red phase is where it is red in every direction. And approximately 12% occurred after the all red phase, so when there's a conflicting green. And this is the area that we're most concerned about with and is most dangerous, and that is because the potential for crashes to occur during that time frame. So looking at all of that data during the baseline data, the 12-week period, on average the data showed about 250 red light running events per day for each intersection. Now I want to share a little bit about the study timeline for the data collection. So this includes two 12-week periods at the 12 study locations. The first 12 weeks ran from September through November 2022 and was collection of the baseline data, which had no changes to signal timing and represented our current practice. The second 12 weeks will run from November 2022 through February 2023, and it is the collection of data which represents the control sites and the treatment sites for the ITE 2020 guidelines. So 3 of the 12 study locations will remain control sites and the signal timing will not be changed, while the remaining 9 locations will be divided equally into 3 groups. First, we have the incremental group. This is where the new calculated yellow change interval will be incrementally increased over 5 2-week periods. Then we have the periodically group. The yellow change interval will alternate every 2 weeks between the new calculated yellow change interval and the baseline yellow change interval. And then we have the long-term group. This is where the new calculated yellow change interval is implemented for the entire 12-week period. To avoid impacting the results of the yellow change interval study, the new red clearance time will be implemented after February 13th, which is the completion of the 12-week data collection for the treatment sites. So again, let's take a look at the red light running frequency at a long-term site. So this is the baseline data at one of the long-term sites during a 24-hour period. During this time frame, at this one site on this one day, there was approximately 195 red light running events. Approximately 91% of these occurred during the all red phase. So again, when there is an all red in every direction, and 9% occurred after the all red phase, so during the conflicting green. Again, the area that we're really most concerned with. So here I want to share with you the red light runner data that's captured at that one location for a specific day. So here we have the yellow phase. Every black dot represents a vehicle entering the intersection during the yellow signal. Again, this is legal and is not considered red light running. We then get to the all red phase, where it is red in every direction. Every black dot within this area represents a vehicle entering the intersection on the red light. So this would be considered a red light runner. Then we have the after all red phase, which is when there's a conflicting green, and every dot here represents a vehicle entering the intersection during the red phase with a conflicting green. And again, this is the most dangerous and concerning because of the possibility of a crash to occur. So now let's look at some preliminary data for the red light running frequency. So let's take that initial long-term site that I showed you for the baseline data that had 195 red light running events. We've now implemented the full ITE 2020 guidelines, and on a 24-hour period at that same site, we now see a total of 71 red light running events, and approximately 90% of those are occurring during the all red phase, where it's red in every direction, and 10% are occurring after the all red phase, so during the conflicting green, the area where we're most concerned with. So in looking at the preliminary results for those 3 long-term sites, which is intersection 7, 10, and 11, and looking at the average daily red light running events, during the baseline period, which was in the entire 12 weeks, the average was anywhere from 110 to 244 red light running events per day at those 3 intersections. When we looked at the long-term period, so implementation of the ITE 2020 guidelines, but this would only be the average of the first 2 periods or the first 4 weeks, we saw that there was a range from 51 to 128 red light running events per day on average. And so we are seeing about a 50% reduction with the implementation of the ITE guidelines. And so while the preliminary data for the long-term sites does look really promising, ensuring that we evaluate all of the 9 treatment sites data over the entire 12-week period is really important to understand the relationship between the signal timing and the driver behavior, which will ultimately help identify the appropriate amount of red change and of yellow change and red clearance intervals that truly result in a reduction of red light running frequency.
Mayor and Council, I realize that was that very detailed and deep presentation, and on a topic that may not be the most exciting or maybe enthralling, but I did want to thank you for bearing with us and giving us your attention in this matter. On our next steps related to this yellow light study is first to complete the data collection, and we anticipate that to happen in February of 13th of 2023, so early next month. Then our research partners at the U of A will take that data across the 12 weeks that we've collected and be able to evaluate that and bring those study results back. We anticipate a few months it's going to take for them to go through that data and be able to quality control it and proof it out and be able to make determinations based on what they see from the data collection efforts. Then we plan to come back here and present our final findings to the council with hopefully recommendations on how we go from here with the results of the study. And then I would also remind you, as Natalie pointed out, that we, the council approved back in September to participate in the national pooled study of multiple agencies that are working through this as well, doing the same study that we're doing right now, similar to that, and coming up with the results. We anticipate that's probably going to take several years to implement, to find out what the results of that. So our study is obviously moving quicker than the national pooled study in this area. So before we conclude, the one thing I wanted to point out was some key considerations to think about as we work through what this whole thing, the study will mean to us. The first thing is the Phoenix Yellow Light Study. The one thing I wanted to put out there a little bit is I don't know if there's any other city who's doing what we're doing before they consider implementation of the 2020 ITE guidelines. We're trying to take a data collection effort, letting data lead us to where we would move as a city. And so that's something that I think is unique about our city in doing that, and I really appreciate the council for their leadership on using the emphasis of using data before we make those decisions. The other thing is driver behavior, and I know we talked a little bit about this in the council subcommittee last week, that driver behavior is really what we're concerned with here. Is we can do a lot of things from an engineering side, including yellow light timing and timing our signals, to be able to try to influence and encourage good behavior of our drivers, but we know there are people out there who will decide to do what they want to do, and that is a point of controlling or enforcement of behavior. And so that's a part that is along with our engineering side. It's not a complete way of making our roads safer. We need to make sure we're approaching all manners to be able to approach the behavior of our drivers. The next one is yellow light timing impacts. Going through, if we want to see where the data leads us. If the data leads us to a point where it says that it's going to be a safety improvement at our intersections to make our yellow lights timing is longer, I want to be able to come back with that recommendation and provide that before council. But I want to let you know, when we look at yellow light timing and we have an emphasis on safety, and we're looking at we're looking across 1,200 signalized intersections, so that will have an impact on our driving public. It may make a commute time or getting through an intersection longer because there are longer yellow light times. And that goes to what our concern here is. Safety is our number one priority. We want to do, if it's safer, let's work on a recommendation to implement this, but we want to let the study play out to kind of see, is that what Phoenix drivers are doing? And I think this council has been very supportive and even unanimous at times in their support for our road safety action plan, putting forth Vision Zero. We've put forth a Safe Streets for All $30 million grant that we're hoping to find out in the next couple of weeks that we're potentially successful. I got my fingers crossed. And those are things to be able to make our streets safer. And so I know we're safety focused, but I know there's people out there in our driving public who will be concerned with congestion and time they spend at the intersections in the interest of safety. And so I think those are all things we need to consider as we're going forward with any kind of decision over the next couple of months on this study. So I want to thank you again, and that concludes our presentation, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. We will begin with public comment. We are joined virtually.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I have to leave here shortly. First off, I want to thank Councilwoman Sucio for bringing this issue forward. It is an important issue. And I want to thank staff for all the studying they're doing. What I'm hearing from you, Keeney, is regardless of the national study, we're moving at a faster pace. And if we see some outcomes that we can realize sooner than later, we're going to do that. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilwoman Stark, members of the council, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that if we have real data here in Phoenix showing us this is the way we should go, then I'm comfortable with bringing that recommendation.
And then just one last question. As far as enforcement, I know we just don't have the motors to enforce like we did in years past. But if, in fact, we do build the motors back up, does that also help with red light running and education of yellow lights, green lights, red lights? I mean, I think that is an important component, and as you can do anything from a scientific standpoint, I think you also need to look at human behavior that sometimes is hard to gauge.
Mayor, Councilwoman Stark, and members of council, and I've been had a conversation with the mayor about this, is we have a no traffic study pilot that we have going on in the city of Phoenix, and that was to be able to do some adaptive signal control to kind of have a better way of looking at all of the traffic that's coming at intersections. One thing that we did note while we were collecting data through that study was when we had the motors at different intersections along that corridor, we did see a drop in red light running as we were collecting data as part of that pilot. It wasn't part of what we were intending to, but we saw a noticeable drop off in red light running that was occurring in those areas. And so to answer your question, I think the culture of enforcement or of enforcing that driver behavior does have an impact on red light running.
Thank you. And Mayor, thank you as well. I do appreciate this. I appreciate Councilman DeCiccio bringing this to the forefront. I think this is a critical issue in traffic safety. Thank you so much with that. I have to make my appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one member of the public, but we can go to Councilman DeCiccio or, all right. That way I don't forget poor Jim. Jim.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Oh, okay, excellent. Before I begin, I want to emphasize that this is with all due respect to Mr. Knudsen and his team. I know they have a very complicated job to do here, and I know that they are working hard at it. That said, I do have some criticisms. Appears to me a fundamental misunderstanding of what the yellow change interval duration is all about. In the study and in the report today, it said the yellow change interval provides time for the driver to either stop before entering the intersection or to proceed and clear the intersection. It's just not correct. That's not what it's about. The length of the yellow has no relevance to the driver who's stopping because they have plenty of distance between themselves and the intersection. The driver can still be safely decelerating as the light turns red. It doesn't matter, they're stopping. However, the duration does have great relevance to the driver who does not have the distance in front of them to the intersection and must proceed. It's really not even a decision on their part. It's just going to happen naturally. That driver needs to have the amount of yellow time needed so they can enter the intersection on the yellow and not be caught with the red as it appears. The yellow needs to provide the driver, okay, I just said that. The law and safety does not require the driver to clear the intersection. The red light's clearance interval, is not intended to get the red light runners out of the intersection. Its primary intent is to get those drivers who enter the intersection legally on the yellow and are then presented with the red to get them out of the intersection.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it's interesting. On the way over, I had my kids in the car, picked them up from school. They got off school a little bit early. And the one thing that I think, hey, what are you talking about, Dad? Well, you know, what's going to be happening at the council today? They're always curious. And I said, we're talking about the yellow lights. Well, it's logical. I mean, it just makes sense to be able to extend that out so that people can stop. I mean, they've been complaining about our city lights for a while. And they actually look at this. I mean, they're good kids. But if you look at that, that's, you know, it was just such a logical thing. The one thing that I found, there is definitely some debate. There are some cities that believe strongly that extending the yellow lights increases safety. And then there are other cities that are more ho-hum about it. They're like, yeah, we don't really see much in it. And I think a lot of it deals with driving patterns, too, in each city. And I know what happens in our city. So the one thing that was common in each of these cities is that there was no downside to it. There wasn't any downside to extending it out. No one could say, hey, look, this is going to be detrimental to the public in order to extend these lights out. That was the one thing that I found, at least in each of these cities. And we have 100 intersections that are considered to be in the top areas of danger in the city. So I'm going to make a motion out there that we extend this study, instead of these 12 lights, we extend it out to the 100 most dangerous intersections that we have. If it were me, I would literally just say, let's just do it and just get this thing done. I would have done this, I think, last year in October, November, when we were talking about it. I would have just gone ahead and done it. But at least from the internal studies that we were able to do out of my office. But so from my end, I just don't think that that's going to happen today. I'm going to put a motion on the table to extend this out to the 100 top intersections where we consider to be extremely dangerous in the city of Phoenix in order to provide that extended yellow light.
Second.
Councilwoman O'Brien?
I have a question about how this study is for 12 weeks that we're doing right now, and how long would a normal study be?
Mayor, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the council, a study like this, if you're undertaking, looking at what driver behavior is out there, I think, normally in something like this, I would recommend a minimum of a year of data collection. I'll tell you the reason why that is because our traffic patterns in the city of Phoenix over a given year change. I'm interested in knowing, how does the snowbirds or the transient kind of population that comes through here on seasonal basis, how does that impact red light running during those times when people are normally here, like maybe November to March, but also when you have 115-degree temperature out there where people have the AC blaring in their cars, and what does that do? Is there any frustration, or we see more red light running occurring during the summer months because people don't want to stop at the intersections? There's different things that might happen over a year to do this, but like I said, I think that we've tried to design this study, the 12-week study, to look at it not just, hey, let's change these intersections here to this. Let's look at how drivers react to different changes in these. And that's kind of how we worked with the University of Arizona on this study. So generally, we would have more time to do something like this, but we're moving forward with the study we've got, and we're hoping that I'm excited to see what the results are after the end of 12 weeks and see what it shows to us.
Sorry. And do we have the capacity to add the additional intersections to the study?
Mayor, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the council, I think the one thing that we want to do is look at what those potential intersections are. As Brianna noted, there were some intersections we were looking at, and then we had to exclude from the 12 because we didn't have the infrastructure feasibility to be able to do that. So we didn't want to have to do infrastructure changes to those, but we could, if that's something the council wanted to move forward, we could look at what that list would be and which ones are feasible to expand the study out beyond those 12. We'd have to get with our research partners on that as well to see what their capacity is to be able to collect and evaluate that data for us. But 12 was what we'd come with initially, but if there's a desire to expand that, we would have to look at how that would go and what those intersections would be. But we'd need some time to be able to evaluate that.
And then Councilman DeCiccio, when your motion to expand it to the top 100 that maybe we could that have the infrastructure to do it, what kind of time frame? Because this 12-week study is over in less than a month.
Right. So I would just extend it out those 100 right off the bat because they're the most dangerous intersections labeled by MAG. And if we don't have the and I'd be happy to amend it to accommodate the concerns that you have to say as long as the infrastructure supports it. So what I've seen, though, is at least the numbers that we have here, I mean, they're just so dramatic. I mean, you've got a baseline period, you've got over 50% drop in some of these intersections, these top three that you had here, intersections 7, 10, and 11. I mean, those are significant drops right off the bat. So from my end, if, I'd be happy to amend it to, as long as the second's okay with that, as long as the infrastructure supports it, so.
And I guess, but would we give additional time frame because these intersections that are there, right, have a 12-week study.
Yeah.
Would you extend the study time for those additional?
We could, yeah.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand.
As long as so what's happening is that by the time we get this report, then the next time we get the next report, you've got all these things going down. So why not include the 100 that you have in there if the infrastructure supports it? Because if you look at this, we may not be voting on this until probably August, if we're lucky. Okay. Well, not in August. It'd be September, October by the time all these things are done.
I support the addition. I just want to make sure we do it in a way that gives them the full authority
extend those others out.
Have a time frame on it.
Yeah, extend the others as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't expect it just to die out. I'm sorry.
If we could amend that for infrastructure and time, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The top 100 MAG intersections, they're not all in Phoenix. So you're proposing just the ones in Phoenix? Okay. Councilwoman Pastor.
But if we want to do Tempe, let's just go ahead and do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. Well, maybe all the border cities, like they're Phoenix on one side, Scottsdale, or Tempe on the other, and Glendale.
Someone else can call Scottsdale and tell them we're taking over their. They're so attached to their traffic signals and how they're different than Phoenix's.
Good luck with that. I know. Let's see. Slide 25. It said red light running 12 sections, baseline data 12-week period. It looks like the 12-week period is over because we have baseline data. We know that 88% already what is happening during red light, and 11% is after red light, and that for me is pretty high. I mean, especially if we're going to Vision Zero and no deaths and all this, wanting to work our way towards that. So knowing this data, what are we doing now?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the council, what we're doing now is if nothing else changes and we continue with these 12 intersections that we're studying, this initial data that we had from the baseline period to the preliminary data, that's the first interaction our Phoenix drivers have had with the new signal timing. We don't know yet whether that impact of the extended yellow times will be something that lasts throughout the entire 12 weeks of the study, or if it's something that people get used to and they say, oh, I've got more time now, and so I'm just going to go back to the behavior I had before when I had shorter yellow time. I don't know what the behavior is going to be. So we are, our intent right now is to complete the 12-week data collection, see what that study shows, and then if we come back with some kind of results or presentation of findings in several months later this spring, my intent would be a recommendation if it looks like the data holds up that is showing red light running reduction, to make a recommendation that we would make these changes at our intersections, not just at maybe the top 100, but the rest of the intersections as well. And so, that's what we're doing right now to be able to evaluate, because we don't know whether the reduction we are seeing right now is something that's going to be lasting longer than the 4 weeks that we have the data for right now.
Okay. So knowing that now you're looking at behavior, because that's what I'm hearing, is that you're looking at behavior in the 12-week period, and after the 12-week period, you're not sure if the behavior will be consistent or will change. So then how will we know that? I mean, after the 12-week study, I'm assuming we're extending to see if behavior changes in another 12 weeks. At what point do you determine when drivers figure out the timing and then you see behavior change, because it could be 12 weeks, it could be 30 weeks, it could be a year. So at what point will you determine a solution on this 12-week study? Because I think it's critical in understanding, if we're waiting for data and everything else, that then there's still a continuation of watching that behavior. Now, if we add additional signals, there's a simultaneous piece going on, other than continuing to watch the behavior, but then now you're starting with another areas that have the infrastructure, then to start seeing, okay, maybe it's a study, maybe a control study over here, and maybe something very different in the other signals and areas and behavior. So that's my curiosity. The other thing is that we have to do something. We can't wait. We can wait a little bit, but we have to start moving, only because we're getting more and more fatalities. And so I don't know how to balance that, and I look at the experts to say, maybe you do this, maybe you do that. I don't know, because this is not my lane.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the council, I think right now the agreement we have with the University of Arizona for this study is to do the study and evaluate the timing effects through that first 12 weeks that's going to end in February. I think it would be prudent if we're, as a group or council or the city, deciding we're going to adopt the new guidelines, that it makes sense for us to continue to evaluate the impact of those changes on driver behavior to see if that red light running continues to be reduced, or if it goes back to what we had with the previous timing. My only concern about Councilman DeCicio's motion was that if we're looking at additional locations to study, and we put that out there, it took us, from the time we were moving forward with the study till we actually started collecting data on the changes was about 6 months. 5 to 6 months. And that could delay us making a decision until the fall, potentially, on data on additional intersections, whereas maybe this spring we might have the data on the 12 intersections that we're studying right now and be able to make some kind of recommendation in the spring.
And then Councilman Guardado was next, but if you wanted to sort of reply to that, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I do. I mean, basically, we're just asking to study the study. So, I mean, at least that's what I'm reading. But we actually, to Councilwoman Pastor's comments, we did do something, and we saw a noticeable difference. I mean, this is pretty huge, at least from my perspective. And the one thing we do know, and to answer her question there too, is that we did see a change. Now, whether or not we don't see a change, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But what we do know right now, the facts in front of us, is that we did see a significant change in behavior. Now, whether people do it forward or not, we're going to know that by extending these things out until, the final decision. I won't be here, so I want to make sure you get the best data as possible. And so the longer the data, the more important you're going to be able to see the impacts that Mr. Knudsen was talking about. So by adding the other ones in there, there's no downside to doing that. You just add them in, extend those yellow lights, and let's see what happens. I'm excited about it, actually. I'm very happy with these results in a very positive way, not in a, like I wish we, kind of did it kind of before kind of thing. But I'm just happy with what we're seeing here. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, looking at these results and, having 75th Avenue in Indian School and seeing that this is working, like, I do feel the urgency of trying to figure out what are we really going to do, especially with one of our deadliest intersections. I know that we've talked about a lot of different things, and I do believe that that we are it's going to be an ongoing thing that we're doing here, right? We're going to do a lot of different analysis. We're going to do a lot of research. I mean, I just think the city is continuing to change every day. Like, I don't doubt that at all, but I do feel that we do have to take some action in terms of starting to reduce the fatalities. And, we've done a lot of work. We're working on Vision Zero. We're working on a lot of different things. One, to reduce to help with pedestrian safety, and we're doing a lot of things to get people out walking a lot more. So we have a whole comprehensive plan, and I think that extending the yellow light is only part of that big plan. But I do think that we do have to start moving forward and really taking some action, especially in a lot of these intersections, and start moving it forward in other intersections as well, as we're able to do it. I get it that we have to do it right, but having the deadliest intersection, the council district that has the deadliest intersection, I do feel strongly that we need to move forward with something, because we do have to figure some of these out. And look, not the same size fits all. I get that as well. So I think we should move forward with this and continue to talk and continue to do the different studies that we need to do to figure out what is it that fits in the different areas. But thank you so much for all of the work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
We'll go to the Vice Mayor and then Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you. I think what I just want to understand at this point, I'm very supportive of the study. I think, in theory, it's supportive of the idea of doing more, but I guess I'm just trying to understand what sort of amended motion or direction you would need to be able to still stay within that, was a 12-week timeline for the first 12. Like, I think it's still important to make progress in that time frame and not push that back, but if it's possible to then, add more simultaneously. So I guess that's what I'm just trying to understand better from you all.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Ansari, members of the council, I think where the scope we have with the University of Arizona right now is to really evaluate the 12 weeks, which ends, like I said, mid-February. We're considering now, obviously, continuing to, on our own, before today, we were looking at the red clearance times, the all red times, and making changes there. And then also continuing to evaluate some of the effects to see, after the 12 weeks, do we still see the same driver behavior? Do we still see the reductions in red light running? So we can move forward with that and be able to continue to evaluate this in the longer term basis past the 12 weeks, but still use that 12-week results to come back with some kind of report analysis in the spring after U of A, our research partners have had a chance to evaluate all the data, and then come back with a recommendation on adoption potentially if the data leads us that direction.
But would the caveats that Councilwoman O'Brien mentioned, like that motion with the depending on infrastructure and staff capacity, is that enough for you to be able to move on these 12 and then continue to do more of the top 100 MAG intersections that fall within Phoenix?
So, Mayor, Councilwoman, sorry, members of council, I think that, if we went forward with the motion that Councilman DeCiccio has laid out, we would need time to be able to look at what those intersections are, then evaluate whether we can install the equipment there, and then develop a study time frame around those additional intersections.
But couldn't you still do the 12
Yes.
and then develop? Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes,
they can work in tandem. Okay,
That's
just want to understand that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Pastor.
I just wanted clarity on that, because I do think that the 12-week study does need to come out since we're there, but then continue with the ones that have infrastructure, add the additional ones, and then look at it, which means that would be an extension of I guess, U of A and everybody, the whole team, for the additional traffic lights that are part of the study. And I don't know, for me, I'm putting it as the 12-week study is one thing, and then we start with the additionals to look a different study. We're looking at it. It's the same study, but it's additional to what the 12-week later on. The 12-week can keep moving. You can come with recommendation as we're still studying the other stuff. That's how I'm relating what the motion is.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, that's a great description. It allows us to continue with the existing study as we've planned and presented to you. At the same time, it allows us to expand the scope of the study to those additional intersections that Councilman DeCiccio wanted included, with the caveats that Councilwoman O'Brien added as well. But it lets us take a longer look at the impact of those kinds of things, as Keeney mentioned, wanting to have greater time, more, ideally more time to look at those things, and allows us to do that, to study those for a longer time, to really look at that driver behavior. Are the drivers going to adjust? Are they going to start now they know it's much longer they have much longer time to get through the yellow lights and those kinds of things. So it kind of lets us do both. Keeney, is there anything else you would add?
Mayor and members of council, I think on top of what Mario laid out, I think the most important thing, if we're going to expand this, is the installation of this sensor equipment on additional intersections, because that, however we handle a study that's beyond the 12 intersections, I think having the equipment at intersections so we can observe driver behavior as we potentially make changes to yellow light timing helps us to better understand driver behavior. Because I will tell you, and this goes back to a lot of things, there's 12 intersections, over 1,200, that's 1% of our intersections. So you can see what's happening out there, but having more data and an understanding of what's going on our signals is more important. So I think, the more equipment we have out there, the better.
Councilman O'Brien.
Thank you. Keeney, did I hear you all correctly that during part of the study there was some police enforcement of red light running?
Mayor, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of council, I didn't mean to confuse that one. The work we're doing on these 12 intersections in the study was not related to my comments on the enforcement. We have another ITE smart traffic signal projects that we're going up just west of SR 51, and we've had that in place for a number of years. And with that, we observed some red light running reductions that happened in that pilot area, and we denoted it was related to some enforcement activity that occurred at a couple of the intersections during a period of time.
So if the police department did do some red light running enforcement at one of your 12 intersections or any future intersections, you would be aware of that so that it could be accounted for when evaluating the data and presenting it to City Council?
Mayor, Councilman O'Brien, members of council, yes. I mean, the more coordination we have with the police department on those kind of enforcement activities to better understand as to our data that we're collection would be perfect and great, and that's what we would always strive to do in working in coordination with our police department.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure who gets to write or say whatever the motion is going to be, but I support continuing this study, adding the extra one, and getting more, getting them out there.
One of the things we could do too, I don't just get a feel of the council. I mean, we've got those identified as the high areas, and I think a lot of them are on the west side. Why not just, even if it doesn't have the infrastructure, just extend the yellow light there anyways? And we can, the ones that do have the infrastructure, just keep, do the study on those. I mean, if these numbers are so huge that we're seeing in front of us, the impact that they have, and then if there needs to be a readjustment in September, October, then do that. I mean, realistically, that's really what we should be doing. I'm just trying to kind of thread the needle here to what I think people are willing to accept. But realistically, if we've got those intersections based on what we've seen so far, why not just do it on all of them, even if they don't have the infrastructure, you know what I mean? And the ones that do have the infrastructure, we just do the study there. But I'll stay with my motion unless someone says, hey, let's go do it.
I would have a little discomfort about the council legislating engineering decisions spontaneously.
Really...
Councilwoman Guardado.
I mean, I do think that what we're trying to do here is give some direction so that we can continue with studies, so that we can, because we see from the initial numbers that we have here, we see that extending the yellow light is working. So I think that we should continue with this program. I think that, we all wish that things could be done a little bit more rapidly. So the sooner that we can, give you guys directive in terms of what we would like to see happen when it comes to the yellow light, I think we should do that. I think for me, that's my intention on seconding the motion. It's just making sure that we continue with this. Obviously, making sure that we complete the 12 intersections, but then continue with the rest as the infrastructure allows it, and as we continue to be able to move forward. Because as we continue to look at this, I just don't see how these numbers will probably won't change, and I think it's something that's important that we need to deal with. So I think that we should move forward with the motion that we have in front of us, and obviously we will always be flexible and continue to work with you all and work with our engineers on whatever it is that is needed. But I just think it's making sure that we put on the record that this is something that we want to continue to do throughout the city, because it seems that it's something that's working, and it's something that I think our residents actually need. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so Councilwoman Pastor just asked, what is the motion? Is that a Denise question?
Mayor, I have that the motion is to extend the study to the 100 most dangerous intersections in Phoenix as long as the infrastructure supports it and with additional time as needed.
And I think it is the intersections on the MAG 100 that are within Phoenix, which I think is a...
Mayor, there's about, I think, between 70 and 80 of the top 100 are in Phoenix.
We have an uncomfortable amount, but we don't have all of them. Well, I think it does matter, though, because the way she wrote it, we'd have to add intersections, or the way I heard it, we would be adding intersections that aren't on the MAG list, so I think it is a different...
I've noted that, Mayor. So
Perfect.
It would be to extend and so if I'm understanding Councilman DeCiccio and Councilwoman Guardado, you would like to continue with the current study and extend the study to the 100 most dangerous intersections in Phoenix of the MAG list, off the MAG list, as long as the infrastructure supports it with additional time as needed.
And I guess question for staff, remind me how much the original study cost and sort of what is the cost associated with?
Mayor, members of council, it was approximately $300,000. For the, I think it was, that includes the study plus all the equipment. I think it might have included there.
Okay, so processing, if it was $300,000 for a small number of intersections, we're cutting other investments. Councilwoman Pastor.
My understanding, budget can correct me, the city manager, but my understanding is that there is some savings in that department, particularly through vacancies. So there is a possibility to fund this. It's a one-time.
Mayor, members of the council, there are vacancies in streets. However, I do want to caution you that we are currently forecasting revenues, and the Arizona Highway User Revenue Fund is under a little bit of duress right now, and revenues are coming in not nearly to projection. So I will not say here today that they can absorb that without having to evaluate cutting or reducing other programs and services.
Okay, so if, go ahead.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the council, as you were talking, as the motion was coming, I was doing the same mental arithmetic as well and trying to figure out. And I know the council did allocate $10 million to the Road Safety Action Plan, and I think funding within that will have this fiscal year to be able to allocate towards this once we know how many intersections we're talking about and the feasibility of those and be able to move forward. But we can work if that assumption, if that's okay with the council.
Okay, so if you can do it within vacancy and existing money that the council has appropriated, we'll do it, but if something has to be cut,
then bring it back.
Bring it back. Is that okay with the maker and the seconder? Okay, and they both nodded that was okay. Yes. All right, so does anyone have anything from staff before we go to a vote? All right, roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring.
Yes.
Ansari.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right, well, thank you guys for this important discussion. May we save some lives and have safer intersection. We are adjourned.
And he came together with a group of other gentlemen from Wickenburg, and they really saw the potential of this area. And they actually found an old Hohokam Canal pathway and began excavating that pathway